You're listening to Music 101 with your host, Alexxis Steel. Sponsored by Steel Notes Magazine. You can find them at the web, folks, at www.steelnotesmagazine.com.
Hi, it's Music 101 with Alexxis Steel, and my co-host for this evening is Johnny T.
Hello, everyone.
And we have the one and only JJ French from Twisted Sister tonight on our show. How you doing, JJ?
Hey, I'm great. How are you guys doing?
We're doing wonderful.
Yeah, very good, very good.
Where are you guys speaking from?
Allentown, Pennsylvania.
Okay, cool. All right.
I know we have an interesting story. Want to talk about that. JJ has had an incredible life. I'll tell you what, with his book, Twisted Business, it's a very good read. I recommend anybody to get that because it's amazing all the things that he's been through, survived, and he's got a lot of gumption, I could tell you that. But anyway, JJ, yeah, so one of the things back when you were a kid, which I didn't even know there was such a thing, okay, because I was a Brownie and a Girl Scout, but I didn't know that the Boy Scouts sold Boy Scout cookies. I never heard of that.
Yeah, the Boy Scouts, and that's how I started as a drug dealer. I started as selling cookies to the Boy Scouts, which just shows you what happens when you're a Boy Scout. You know?
Yeah.
It leads to drug dealing and heroin use. You know,
There you go.
Boy Scouts, you got to watch yourself. You know, but yes, I was a Boy Scout. I had set the record in my Scout troop of 110 boxes of cookies, and then they threw me out the following year for a variety of reasons, and having long hair is one of them. Also, being an atheist, you need a letter from your religious leader to become an Eagle Scout, and I thought that was a bit hypocritical. I could have gotten letters from rabbis. I'm Jewish, but I said that's kind of weird. I get a letter from someone who doesn't even know me just because you have to have a letter from a religious leader. And it was, believe me, I was 14 and it was a political statement. And I said to my dad, I think it's nonsense. And my parents were not religious. They just said, well, I'm not going to argue. You know, if you don't feel comfortable, you don't. But the irony of it was they throw me out and then they call me up a couple of months later and ask me, would I sell cookies to raise the quota of the cookie sales for the troop? And I'm like, you guys threw me out. You know, you guys threw me out because I had long hair and because I didn't want to get a letter from a rabbi. And then my father tells me, put down the phone. And he says, you know, that guitar that you wanted, you know, that my father wouldn't come up with the $25 for the bass guitar that I wanted. And my father said, tell the guy, if he gives you 10 cents a box commission, we'll sell a lot of cookies and we'll get you your guitar. So I sold 242 boxes of cookies and raised.
You were like the world's record, weren't you, or something like that?
At the time, yeah. I mean, I can't compare it to the world and I can't compare it to anything else, but I will say at the time, at least that was the most that my troop ever sold. And I got $24.20. And my father, being the big spender, threw in the 80 cents, you know, and I bought my first guitar. And that's how that was the beginnings of it.
And what kind of guitar did you get?
The Hagstrom bass,
Okay.
which I proceeded to screw up completely in shop class. You know, back in the day we had shop class. I don't think shop class exists
I don't know.
anymore in school. I don't know, but we had woodwork class and shop class. I brought the bass and I stripped the paint off it and I put a different pickup. It was the beginnings of my rock and roll world, you know, where I was reading magazines and how to improve stuff when you didn't have the money to buy the big stuff. So that was the first guitar.
Right. Okay. So you were doing that, and
I can remember now, one of the things is that your father was a jewelry salesperson before this all started. So I guess it was a high risk deal that you just figured, you know, there was a lot of problems in the area where you were living, I believe, was it New York?
Yeah, I live in Manhattan, and my father wanted me to be a jewelry salesman, and my mother wanted me to be a politician or a lawyer. And I said to my dad, I said something like, do you make a lot of money as a jewelry salesman? You know, and he goes, well, you do if you sell diamonds. And I said, well, you don't sell diamonds. And he goes, no, because it's risky.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, I wind up in an armed robbery, which I go into depth. At the age of 10, a rabbi diamond dealer in my building was robbed, and I was standing there when the guys were robbing them. They put a gun up to my head and threatened to kill me. And, that was the first time I was almost murdered. I went through many times where just because of happenstance, I wasn't killed. But I wasn't killed. And I thought to myself, man, this is dangerous. This is dangerous. They almost killed the guy.
Yeah.
They put a gun to my head. And I said to my dad, I don't think I want to be in the jewelry business. And so my mother said, well, okay, good, because, I'm working for all these politicians and I can get you a job in Washington being a page when you're 16. And then Kennedy was assassinated. And I said, I don't know if politics is too safe either.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And then 2 months later, the Beatles are on TV. And I went, that looks like a good choice. Girls, rock and roll, screaming, superstar. I'll pick door number 3, so that was.
Door number 3 was the wise choice.
That was my choice. However, I will say this to you. If someone, how many times you interview guys who are like 65 or older, who all say when they saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan, they wanted to become rock stars. That's like a standard.
That's standard. Yes.
Everybody.
We saw the Beatles. Oh my God, I got to do that. I'm one of those guys. Saw the Beatles. I got to do that. But this is what I will tell you. If at that very moment that I was watching the Ed Sullivan Show and I said to myself, that's what I want to do, and someone had put an arm on my shoulder and they said, okay, John Segal, you will have a gold record 20 years and 6 months from now, I think I would have said, 20 years and 6 months from now.
That sounds like forever.
Yeah.
What, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? I'm not going to do that shit. 20 years. So we got our first gold record 20 years and 6 months after I saw the Beatles on TV. And I thought, the beauty of not knowing is the beauty of not knowing, right? You don't know.
Yeah.
You don't know. So, I wanted to become a rock star, whatever that meant, so I meant stumbling around and joining band after band after band after band after band and breaking up and getting together and breaking up and getting together. And, and it was another, it wasn't until I was 20 that Twisted happened. So there's already 8 years of craziness going by, and then of course Twisted happens and it's another 12 years from that point. Think about that. Now in the book, all the tour dates are in the book, right? Did you go over that? How crazy is that list?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a crazy life.
Pause.
It's a crazy, crazy life.
It's a crazy list of shows. And so people, always ask me, what was it like? And I said, man, it was work.
Oh, sure.
We worked really, really, really hard. Hence the book is a business book and it's a bizwar, which is a phrase that I coined. Like, how rom-coms are romantic comedies,
Right.
bizarre, I want to coin that phrase. It's a business book and a memoir because I can't separate the two.
No, because you started out doing sales like I did when I was a kid. I used to sell stuff like lemonade or books and I had a retail background and a sales background, and you start that when you're kids. So that follows you throughout your whole life into different things that you're doing. So you start out with the cookies, and from that, then you're selling drugs, you know what I mean? So it's just a different thing, but it's still part of the same kind of thing. You're still selling.
Right.
Yeah. You know what? When I was this drug dealing hippie guy, it was fun back in the early days, like in the beginnings. I sold weed, and look, weed's legal now. I was ahead of my time. I told you people 50 years ago it's legal, but I was a hippie from 67 to 72, and that was a pretty heavy time. The drug use was unbelievable. It was psychedelics. It was, and everything around it was heavy drugs. Everybody was stoned all the time, and we would go to see Jimi Hendrix and Led Zeppelin and all these bands, for nothing, for $2, for $1. I mean, you could see Jimi Hendrix for $1 in Central Park.
It's amazing for what they were charging back then.
Yeah, you could see Led Zeppelin in Central Park for $1 and $1.50. If you couldn't afford $3 at the Fillmore, you saw them for $1.50. Try to explain that to somebody.
Yeah,
I can't comprehend that right now.
Try to explain that you could see Jeff Beck and Rod Stewart and the Grateful Dead and the Jefferson Airplane and Janis Joplin and Moby Grape and the roll, and you can see these bands for $1, $2, and you could see them every weekend. We lived in a great time, but the problem was that the drug scene, in the beginning it was fun, and by the end of it, by 1972, it had gotten really ugly. And really,
I wanted to ask you this, JJ, not to interrupt you. something that I always thought, because, you know, I was a hippie growing up in my teenage years and all. And I always thought it would be cool to live in a commune. And you live in a commune on top of the hill in Wilkes-Barre in Pennsylvania,
Yeah.
which is like about an hour and a half away from here.
Yeah, that was a weird gig. That was after I stopped doing drugs, as a matter of fact, which is even weirder. I had stopped cold turkey on Easter Sunday, 1972. I mean, I literally made up my mind. I said, if I continue down this path, I'm going to die, because I was going to die. I'd OD'd on heroin. I was almost murdered multiple times in drug deals. Wrong place, wrong time.
Right.
Guns, knives. I smuggled drugs in Europe. I dealt in Europe. I was living by the seat of my pants. Like, you know, I was like a hustler and a street dealer, and it was fun, but then it got dangerous, and then it got, you know, really bad. And when it got really bad, it got really bad. And I kind of had to make up my mind to stop. So when I stopped on Easter Sunday, 1972, it was kind of like, now what? Now I need to find people who don't know me, so I don't have to prove to them who I was, right? So I had to find a new group of friends. I found a group of friends in Jersey, and they knew guys who owned a farm on the top of the mountain in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. Now, it wasn't until years later that I found out the guys who owned it were drug dealers who financed the purchase from dealing. But they never discussed it with me, so I didn't know about it, right? So it didn't matter. It didn't matter to me. But we lived in this incredible farm on the top. There were two mountaintops, and they owned both of them. These guys bought this property from drug money, from what I heard years and years later.
Mm-hmm.
And if you remember, in 1972, there was a hurricane and a flood in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. That was a disaster.
My friend was in that flood, lost everything.
Right. So you remember that, right?
Oh yeah.
My brother lost.
We were on the top of the mountain, so everybody wanted to come up to us to get away from the floods in Wilkes-Barre. So that band that I was playing with was a Allman Brothers cover band, and I was still a Grateful Dead Allman Brothers freak at that time. Although I was transitioning out of my hippie youth, but it was a very strange 6 months, because I stopped doing drugs in April, and Twisted didn't start until December. And in that time period, I went through an enormous transformation.
Mm-hmm.
I transformed out of the hippie scene into the glitter glam scene.
You got a shag haircut.
Yeah, the whole deal. Like, you know, I got Ziggy Stardust and Transformer and Martha Hoople's All the Young Dudes album for free with a magazine subscription, and I lost my mind. I mean, as much as I lost my mind when I saw the Beatles, what I say is the Beatles were the Saturn rocket, and Bowie was the booster rocket that took it to the next level. So the Beatles took me to that point, and then Bowie freaked me out. Like Mick Ronson freaked me out. Like, it just freaked me out. And I said, that's what I want to be. But none of my friends wanted me to be that. They were all hippies. And so I had to leave New York in order to reinvent myself. And the book is about reinvention in a way. It's about constantly reinventing and pivoting and changing your life. However, I was a street guy, and I was very smart about it, and I wasn't going to let it defeat me. I was just going to move. So I transitioned out of it, and that's what happened. But yeah, the glam thing had a huge effect on my life.
You had a lot of ups and downs in your life, personally and professionally.
Yeah, well, 2 years into the Twisted experience, things got really bad. And that original version of the band, for people who don't really know the history, and hopefully you'll buy the book and you'll understand it's a business book, but it kind of takes you through how hard it was. The first, I got thrown into this band. Okay, I don't know anybody. I answered, someone got my phone number. I go and I audition. I get the job. And all of a sudden I'm thrown into a club world where you could work 6 days a week, 5 shows a night. Now that doesn't exist anymore, right? That does not exist anymore. Nobody can do that. Nobody can do that. I mean, now if you work twice a month, that's a lot.
Now, was this Silver Star before you became?
No, we called ourselves Silver Star, but we were Twisted Sister before we walked out the door of the house. Mm-hmm. So it was Silver Star from last week of December 72 to Valentine's Day 1973, at which point we changed the name of Twisted Sister. And when we hit the bar scene, you know how people don't understand, you can see Led Zeppelin for $1 and you can see Jimi Hendrix for $1.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Try to explain to a band that you could work 6 days a week, 5 shows a day and actually get paid really decent money, they'll look at you like, what planet are you on? But that was the planet of the cover world.
Right. Yeah.
World. It wasn't like a magic thing. It wasn't like Twisted was doing something special. Everybody did it. It was hundreds of bars. The drinking age was 18, and you worked 5 shows a night, 5 40-minute sets, 40 on, 20 off, 40 on, 20 off, 40 on, 20 off, 40 on. So what does that mean? You know, we were a show band. We changed clothes every set. Everything was new presentation. So what does that mean? You start adding up the sets. I describe it in the book. I said, in the first 2 years, I did 1,940 performances.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Explain this to a man. These days,
right?
JJ, come and see my band. How many shows you played? Oh, we play a lot. We play twice a month. Oh, really? Twice a month? Yeah. How long you play? Like 45-minute shows, man. We've done like 50 shows in 2 years. I'll go, really? 50 shows in 2 years? Wow. Well, let me know when you hit 500. I'll come and see you. 500?
Yeah.
That'll never happen. I go, well, then there's a good chance I'm not going to come and see your band, because I want to see a band that's played 500 times. We played in the first 3 years of the band. I recently did the math. And this is before Dee and Eddie joined. I was already at 3,000 performances at that point. All right. Because that's what you did. That's what you did. You worked and you played cover material.
Yeah. And
you learned how to play an instrument. You learned how to play an instrument. You know, when people talk to me about alternative bands, I go, you know what the word alternative means? It means alternative to practicing. Mm-hmm. It's alternative to rehearsing. It's alternative to good singing. Like, you know, that's my kind of view. But we worked hard. And that's in the book. I describe the grind of what it was like to do that.
And it was a grind. There's something that I think that, and I didn't know, that a lot of people probably didn't know, that you were almost in a band with Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons.
Yeah. I auditioned, you know, this is such a weird story because it would be a footnote that wouldn't make any difference in the world. I never made any claim. You know, one day a journalist said to me, you ever play with any other band? I said, well, I auditioned for this band, Wicked Lester, returning to Kiss, and it didn't work out. I wasn't good enough. That's what I said. It's exactly what I said. I didn't make a big deal out of it. I went, you know, I auditioned for them and they became Kiss and they became famous. Oh, you were in Kiss? No, I was never in Kiss. I auditioned for this transitionary band that they were in and they were thinking about changing it over. And I said, no, and I didn't make it. And I wasn't good enough. All right. I was not good enough. When they finally put the band together as Kiss with Paul.
Ace Frehley.
Yeah.
They were great. I was there at the Loft. I watched them play. I looked at Ace. I went, wow, he's a much better player than me at the time. I give him all the props in the world. Gene and Paul were very smart. Gene was arrogant as hell. Like, what else is new?
Yeah.
What else is new? I describe an episode in the book with it, but still in all, it doesn't take away from the vision. Now, Gene talks about business too much to me. It almost makes you feel stupid to be a fan sometimes because he always seems to be talking business. But, you know, he's a smart guy and he had a vision, and Paul had a vision, and that vision was correct. And they went through hell. You know, their story is tough. If you read their story, their books, you know, they went through hell. They were up top. They went down. They went up. They went down. They're still here.
Yeah.
Here's the thing that's amazing. If you go back to 1973 and you were to ask the Ramones, Alice Cooper, Kiss, Judas Priest, Ozzy, Sabbath, AC/DC, we're all out in 73. This is all for 73. If you asked us all back then, how long would we last? What do you think we would have said back then?
Probably 5 years, I would say.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Maybe 10 at the absolute most, because the Beatles lasted 10 and they had set the standard. But 5 years was about it. People said to me, what are you going to do? I said, 5 years, man. Then we're going to like retire to an island somewhere, like some bullshit.
Yeah.
Here we are 50 freaking years later.
That's amazing.
Yeah. All of us, Scorpions, Kiss, AC/DC, Judas Priest, Black Sabbath. You know what? Kudos to every single one. I don't care what you play, how you do it. You last this long in this freaking cesspool business that we were in, and you deserve what you get out of it, because it's a brutal business. And none of us could have predicted the road that it took. You look, I've got 37 gold and platinum records on my wall. Now, you walk in my office and you go, "Whoa, man, that's like great." And I go, "You know the price I paid for that shit?
Sure,
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was worth it.
Blood, sweat, and tears.
I don't know. The price one pays for this is astounding." And hopefully the book enlightens people and explains to them. That's what I want to do. I want to demystify it a little bit. Did you feel that I did demystified it when you read?
Yeah. I have a lot of stories that I liked, and like the one I had a laugh at how the name, because I'm sure people ask you, well, how did you get the name Twisted Sister, right?
Yeah.
And the story that Michael, that was in the band, was drunk, and he said, called up or whatever, and said that was the name of the band, and didn't even remember it the next day.
Didn't remember the next hour.
Yeah.
He came back from the bar. And I went, "Man, that is a great name." He goes, "What?" I go, "Fucking Twisted Sister. Well, you called the house. I picked up the phone. You said, I got a great name," because we had an argument about the name of the band. He didn't even remember. And the tragedy of Michael, here's the tragedy of Michael. Besides the fact that Michael, in a drunken stupor, pulled a loaded gun out on Mel, the drummer, in a bar fight, which led to the end of the first version of the band, which by itself is, by the way, a horrible story.
Yeah.
To witness the whole process of what happened that night still will never leave my head. I mean, still watching Michael grab the gun, still having it aimed at Mel, having Mel challenge him and say, "Pull the trigger," which you don't tell a drunk Irish guy to pull a trigger of a loaded gun. I don't really care. You probably, it's maybe not the wisest thing to do. But putting all that aside, Michael was a sweet guy. He was a sweetheart. He was, and he eventually got hit by a car and suffered permanent brain damage, where he forgot everything. So when we did our documentary, did you see the documentary? We Are Twisted FN Sister. Did you?
No, I didn't get to see that yet.
But if you watch the documentary, Michael's not in it. The reason why he's not in it, he doesn't remember anything. We went to his house, me and the director. And we said, "Michael, I want you to tell your story. It's important." He goes, "I don't remember a thing, John." That's sad. And that's a combination of, unfortunately, substance abuse and a car accident. But as the book peels itself out, the substance abuse and the alcohol abuse amongst members of the early versions of the band were devastating. And I just sat there going, how am I expected to succeed when these guys are just wasted all the time? And I'm subjected to their wastedness. I have to put up with this bullshit. Now, you guys can interview a million musicians and they can all tell you how much they partied, and it's, you can name all the bands, and I don't care. I don't care that these bands got away with it. That's their business. They figured it out. That's good for them. It wasn't right for me. It didn't make sense to me. Also, I don't think any of them went through the hell in the bar scene that we did. Most bands are together 2-3 years, get a record deal, and they're done. Queensryche, we went on tour with Queensryche. They were 19 years old. When we went on tour with them, they came and joined us in a gigantic tour bus, and we had a little van. We didn't have any money. And they had gotten a huge advance and a huge tour bus. And I looked at them and I go, "How old are you?" And they go, "We're 19. And we're like, at this point, we were 30. And I said, "How many shows have you played?" I think they said 12. And I said, "Like 1,200? They go, "No, 12.
Wow.
I said, "You played 12 shows?" And they go, "Yeah, 3 with Ozzy, 3 with Def Leppard, 3 with Metallica, 3. I'm like, "That's what you played 12 shows? Like, did you win the lottery or something?"
Yeah, really.
We already had played like 5,000 shows. So I said to them, let's look at this, man. We're together 10 years. You're together like a year. We played like 1,000 shows. You played 12. We got a van. You got a freaking tour bus. Like,
yeah, right.
What is wrong with this picture? Now, I don't begrudge them winning the lottery that way. I don't begrudge any band. And they were so sweet to us. They felt terrible. We were in a van. We were in a Winnebago or a VW van. We couldn't sleep because we were driving in rent-a-cars. They felt terrible. They had extra bunks in their bus, and they said, "Please, use our bunks." So they were They were nice. And I think that they understood how fortunate, they were that they won the lottery, that way. But the fact is that most of these bands never went through the hell that we went through. So that's another thing. Our story so particular.
Yeah, with the band breaking up and the changing of members constantly. And like, it just seemed like the carrot was always being dangled in front of you, but just when you're ready to grab it, was pulled out from under you.
Well, like I say, we were turned down more times than a bed sheet, and we've come back more times than Freddy Krueger. We keep coming back and coming back and coming back and coming back, when most people just go, enough.
Right. But you never gave up.
No. And when people ask me about the fact that I never gave up, I honestly say I was either the smartest guy in the room or too stupid to stop. I don't want to give myself all the credit. I mean, you have faith in it, but comes a point where you really start to question. And that did happen. That really did happen finally. But we took so many hits. But you know what? What most bands don't have the luxury of is we were so big in the local area, in the tri-state bar area back in the day when drinking age is 18. Think about this. Drinking age is 18, which means 15-year-old kids with fake proof for getting in. How easy was it to make proof back 40 years ago?
Right.
It was easy. So the amount of kids was enormous. The amount of bars were enormous. The size of the bars were enormous. And the ability for the band to get paid a lot of money to sustain itself was huge. So we would get rejected during the day and we go out and play to 4,000 people that night. Well, you don't feel so bad when you're playing 4,000 fans. You do feel bad if you get rejected and you're playing in front of 20.
Yeah.
When you're playing in front of thousands, it helps you get over it. But everything gets old after a while. Anyway, so it got really old after a while.
Oh, sure. I remember the story that I was reading about the money situation. You were supposed to have this record deal, and then they were saying that you owed the money and they want you to pay it back. And there was all these mobsters. And you said even Henry Hill actually played at or worked at the club, which I liked a lot of that. I love Goodfellas, and I know some of the people in it. And it was great. I loved reading that, and I mean, a lot of references to Goodfellas.
Well, only in that, no club owner ever came to me and said, I'm a mob guy. No club owner ever came to me and said, I did something bad to somebody. No club owner ever, nor did I ever ask any of them if they did. I don't want to know. Was this an atmosphere where this existed? 100%. Were there plenty of stories amongst the musicians and the agents about who did what to whom? 100%. But it's like, don't ask, don't tell.
Right.
I don't want to know. I mean, I didn't know Henry Hill worked at the bar until years later. Okay. I didn't know. I didn't know about the whole scene. I mean, I didn't know about the Goodfellas scene. I didn't know about the Lufthansa heist. I didn't know about that period, that era, that area of Long Island where things were rough. But frankly, all these club owners were, these kind of like Italian characters. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to be cliched about it because, like I said, none of them ever said to me, I'm a mob guy. Nobody ever said it to me. But, you're in a business where there's all cash business and, who knows? I mean, it's not difficult to connect the dots here. There's certainly enough stories and enough books written about the way the scene kind of was. But the reality,
even in the 70s, I know that firsthand. My first husband was a booking agent in the Jersey Shore down in Wildwood. Yes. He was threatened to end up in a garbage can if he didn't relinquish territory. So, and that was a mob. Anton, this guy, so that's existed for a long time.
I'm sure the characters that I know are some of the characters that names you would have known, and probably most of them are not even alive anymore. And frankly, look, I borrowed money from these guys to finance demos, and people said to me, "You're crazy," and I said, "No, I'm not. There's an honor here. If you say you're going to pay them back at a certain date by playing a show and you did it, they never bothered you." And that's the absolute truth. I'm not going to tell you that they were great to everybody in the world, but I borrowed money on a number of occasions under an agreement. We always maintained our side of the agreement, and therefore there was no problem. I was threatened by a recording studio owner. Mm-hmm. The last guy in the world I thought would threaten me. I thought I'd be threatened by all these other guys, Jimmy the Chair, Frankie the Shoe, Billy the Knife, that kind of stuff. No, those guys didn't bother me. This freaking guy owned a studio, threatened to break my neck. I sat there, was like, he's really threatening to break my legs. I said this to my manager at the time, Mark Poon. I said, oh my God, this dude just threatened. Now, he had a legitimate business grief. Okay. He had a legitimate grief. And we did, I guess we owed money based upon this theoretical understanding, which really I didn't understand, but I understood he had a legitimate grief. And so when he made that threat, we made a phone call to some people who we thought would have some influence. You can draw whatever inference you wish from that. But and an agreement was made to pay this guy money, and he called off the threat to get me. But it was the only time I was ever threatened, and I was kind of stunned by it. I didn't expect it. I mean, I thought it was right out of a movie. You know, I walked out going, "Are you fucking kidding? Really? Did that guy just threaten?" I mean, I said to him, "Can I have a minute here? Like, I need to go collect my thoughts." You know, he just threatened to break my kneecap. And bottom line is, as I say in the book, it just so happened that the money that we agreed to, we got paid exactly that much money from Secret Records. So we kind of just went here and we paid the guy off, and that was the end of that. But yeah, that was pretty freaky. I mean, that was towards the point of wondering if the band was ever going to make it and get signed again, because it'd been turned down over and over. And the book illustrates, as the documentary does, failure after failure after failure after failure. But what the book illustrates is how we dealt with the failure. You know, the book is about reinventing yourself. And I teach the twisted method of reinvention, which I want to talk about. It's like I took the word twisted and made it so that it was easily understandable that it's lessons, and it's tenacity, wisdom, inspiration, stability, trust, excellence, and discipline. Well, most people think that rock bands make it with sex, drugs, rock and roll, and fairy dust. You know, you make some sort of a deal with the devil and somehow you become famous. I can't tell you how Motley Crue became famous. I can't tell you how AC/DC or Scorpions became famous. I can just tell you what we did. And our roadmap to succeed was this constant ability to overcome challenges and crises and catastrophes. So I quantified them in the book. I laid it all out. I actually give tools to people. I said, this is what we did. This is how we got over it. This is how we dealt with it. What band or artist that you know has not dealt with rejection?
Right.
They all do.
They all do. And you know, it's a weeding out process. How much rejection can you stand before you throw your hands up and go, I'm out of here?
Right.
That's really what the book is about. And by the way, that approach to life is not just in the rock and roll world. That's life. That's business. That's life. I mean, the idea of reinventing oneself is a lifelong pursuit. You know, you reinvent yourself the first day you go to school. You reinvent yourself every September, the first day of school. You put on new clothes and you try to present a new person. You reinvent yourself when you go to a new school. You reinvent yourself when you go to college. You reinvent yourself when you go get your job application. You reinvent yourself when you get married. You know, you reinvent yourself when you got kids. This is what we do. And now with COVID, what is COVID forcing people to do?
Oh, yeah. That's how we started doing our Zoom interviews, actually.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it is. So what shocks people, I think, is that a rock musician is sounding this logical.
Yeah.
That may be the shocker.
Yeah, they expect you to be like, oh, cool, man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you know, strong
Well,
man.
there was a comedian once who said that Schwarzenegger and Stallone are going to star in a movie called Duh. You know, and I thought about this and I thought, you know, heavy metal musicians are looked on like dumb blondes, you know, like, what do you know, man? Hey, man, cool. Hey, dude. You know, they don't think that, you know, there's brains going on there. I guarantee you that Nikki Sixx is the brains of Motley Crue. I guarantee you. He's the brains there. I guarantee you that every successful band has a guy in the band who thinks business-wise. Obviously, we know that Kiss does, you know. Maybe AC/DC does too, but it doesn't hurt to have a band member have that ability.
And that was you. I mean, that was you. I mean, you started Twisted Sister. You know, you took it to where it is now, you know.
But you need great people with you.
Of course,
Yeah.
yeah.
And D, I don't sing and I don't write. And D sings and writes, and he's one of the best frontmen on the planet Earth. And he had the same drive I did, man. We didn't always get along, but you know what? He didn't do drugs. He didn't drink. He said, we have an unbelievably hard schedule. We got to work at it every day. And we worked at it. We played 5 or 6 days a week. And on the 7th day, we rehearsed. I mean, we never took the foot off the gas, and D would come up with ideas and he'd say, I want to do this song and let's come up with a new stage set. And then Suzette, his wife, would design clothes. And, again, Mark Mendoza, unbelievable bass player. Mark's same kind of dedication. Tell me when, tell me where, tell me how. Not everybody can be the thought leader, but you also need quality people to be.
Oh, absolutely.
To follow.
We just watched a video with the Eagles with Don Henley and Glenn Fry. They were the brains of the band, the songwriters and the ones that kept the band glued. But they also had the members of the bands too that they just didn't fit in. So then they had to make the changes. They said it's rough, but it's business.
True, but they found the right people to go along.
Right.
And so while some musicians didn't go with their vision, Joe Walsh did go with their vision.
Yes.
Timothy Schmidt did go with their vision. So in other words, those guys benefited because of how much hustle that Henley and Fry were, but they were team players. You can't have 20 quarterbacks on a team.
No.
You can't. What you have to do is you got to recognize that the quarterback, and you have to trust the quarterbacks. And then you have to dedicate yourself the same way the quarterbacks dedicate themselves. So Mendoza, Eddie Ojeda, AJ Pirro, he came in later because we went through a lot of drummers. So AJ didn't suffer through the bar scene. But the reason why we went through so many drummers was that they couldn't keep up. The amount of work was so hard. Like, they go, oh man, I got to rehearse tomorrow. Well, if you're drinking the night before, you're not going to want to rehearse on a day off. Okay. Because you're trying to sleep it off. But if you're not high, you get up the next morning and go, what's my job today?
Right.
That's the difference. So that's why my tolerance for drugs and alcohol, fell off the cliff. It doesn't mean that you can't do it, but if doing it is going to prevent me from succeeding, I don't want you here.
Right.
I don't want you to. We used to tell band members who auditioned, by the way, we really don't want you to do drugs and drink. I mean, what you do on your own time is your business. And, if you want to have a beer once in a while, I mean, we're not running a freaking Jehovah's Witness retreat. Okay. But you have to understand that the process of this band is not sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Okay. It's rock and roll first. It's really what it is. It's hard work and rock and roll. And some guys would lie to us and tell us, oh, I'm straight. And they would join the band and we'd expose it quickly that it was bullshit because you could tell. And other guys would go, man, are you serious? Really? I came in this band. I thought we could party. No, you can't.
Yeah, they have the idea,
Yeah.
oh, this is a heavy metal band. They're going to be like all partying and wild and crazy.
Yeah. And Twisted Sister was really big in the bars, it drew thousands of people. And the guys go, oh, wow, man, this is great. I'm going to be in this band. I'm going to get laid. I'm going to get high and party. And we go, by the way, we have a schedule and it's 7 days a week. And they go, are you serious? So we go, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And the ones that went, I'll pass, I respected them more because at least they said, I'm not going to lie to you.
They're up front.
I want to do that. I go, find another band, and maybe you'll succeed. Not this band. The ones who told us, oh yeah, I'm going to be straight. And then they fuck up. Happened all the time.
Exactly. Hey, I wanted to ask you about what you were doing when you actually hooked up with the band members that came to be Seven Dust. You were managing and producing them and wound up selling, what was it, like almost $500,000 in record sales. So you said in the book about, you didn't even make that money with Twisted Sister. So,
Well, we didn't make the money selling records. I managed them.
Yeah.
Did very well. But, first of all, my relationship with Seven Dust ended 25 years ago.
Yeah.
So let's put this in perspective, or ended 20 years ago. And they certainly have had a career.
Yeah.
If you think that bands don't last long, the fact that they've lasted 25 years, we've lasted 50, says something about my ability to pick bands that have longevity.
Right.
Okay. But Seven Dust was the culmination of like 5 years prior. I never even told the whole story of Seven Dust, but Seven Dust started as a band called Red Threat. And it was an AC/DC cover band in Atlanta. that I signed to a production deal. And then they broke up and became a band called Roulette. And then Roulette was more like Journey. Some of the guys lasted and some didn't. And then we got a production deal and that fell apart. And then that band turned into Snake Nation. And they changed more band members. And Snake Nation was more like a Pearl Jam kind of band. The thing was, they were always running after something that was already coming, kind of gone. You know, the hair band thing came, it was too late. The Journey band thing came, it was too late. The grunge thing came, it was too late. You know, so they kept on churning. And as they kept churning, original guys left. So by the time Crawl Space, who became Seven Dust, was Crawl Space, none of the guys from Red Threat were any longer in the band. It was almost like a Twisted Sister, repeated Twisted Sister. And that was like, started in 90, when did I go down there? 98. So, excuse me, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94. By 94, I was out of the music business. And I was selling stereo equipment on the East Side. And that was it. I had a kid, I married, I had gotten over my bankruptcy, which I go into great detail in the book.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very humbling experience. Now I'm selling stereo equipment on the East Side, having to go into buildings where I had to go through the back door because I was the quote help. Okay. I would go into people's houses and see my records there. I would never say a word because I don't want to get into this like, hey man, woe is me, I'm doing this. You know, my life was my life. My wife at the time was very successful in the music industry, working with a label. She was British and she was doing fine. And Crawl Space calls me. They're like the 7th version of this band that started out, or the 6th or 5th version of this band that started out way earlier. And I said to my wife, I want to give this a shot. She says, no, you can't. You know, you've had your shot. You know, she was a veteran in the music industry. She said, you know, you had a 1 in a million shot with Twisted, and now you got a job in a stereo store, and we have a kid, and we don't need the money. I'm making money, and I don't want you to do it. And I said, oh man, but I really think they're really good. And she goes, well, if you think they're good, tell them to come to New York because I don't want you spending money going down to Atlanta. So I challenged them. I told them to come to New York, which I didn't expect that they would do. I really didn't expect they would do it. And lo and behold, they called me up and they're going, we're on our way up, man. And all of a sudden I had to find shows for them. And I booked them in CBGB's, the bitter end, believe it or not, as Crawl Space, Rock Ridge Saloon across the street from there, and a place called Spiral on Delancey or Houston Street. It was like a heroin dealer bar. And I brought all these record company people down. Everybody said, no, not interested. And the guitar player was arrested for drunk driving on the way back to the hotel, was arrested and thrown into the Tombs. And it took 4 days to locate the kid. He was a young kid, beautiful looking kid. By the time we found him and got him out of jail, he was traumatized and quit the music business completely. And that was the end of the band, I thought. But they got Clint Lowry to replace the kid. And I remember Lejean being in a band called Body and Soul a year before he joined Crawl Space, or 2 years before he joined Crawl Space. And I remember telling Morgan, if you ever work with that guy, let me know, because Lejean was just a superstar, you know. So he calls me, he goes, Lejean's in the band. So anyway, I thought it was all over with them. And they went back to Atlanta and they said, man, you really got to come down. I went down, we made a demo with Bitch in Black, and we got a deal. And it was great for a long time, but they're on a terrible label. They were on TVT. The owner of the label was legendary in his dysfunction. Let's just put it that way. It was legendary. And there was problems, and it lasted as long as it could. And then and we parted ways. But I will say their first album is still the biggest selling record they made. I'm proud of it. It's a great record. It's the only record ever produced with Mendoza, and it's almost platinum, I think, or it's close to it. I think when I managed them, they had the most success they had. Now, they've continued on as a band and done very well. Like I say, I wish them well. I say it in the book. I said they've asked me to manage them over the years, and I declined. And I said, no, sometimes you should just be friends. You know, it's like relationships. Sometimes it's better just to stay friends and not go into bed with somebody. But they're a hardworking band and a great band. And we had different philosophies. Listen, imagine getting a manager like me who tells you, I don't like drinking and I don't like drugs, and you're a young man. Are you really going to listen to me?
Right.
Are you really going to pay attention to me? Do I sound like your dad?
Yeah.
You know, and maybe I was overly harsh, but it was the only way I know how to be successful was to work hard. I didn't understand how you could incorporate all the rest of that crap into your life. And so I don't think they enjoyed that kind of parental sounding, shit. I get it. I get it. It's hard, but then again, that's my philosophy. So,
Exactly.
I'll pay
You
attention.
have to have drive. Drive is the success that you're going to have in the
Yeah.
long run.
Yeah. And you have to be able to be together enough to have the drive.
Mm-hmm.
Because, just having people talk about, what is the soul thing? There's no soul. There's no singular reason why. Like tenacity, yes. Okay. But you need wisdom. You need to be smart enough to understand it. You need inspiration, because inspiration is what fuels you when you don't have money. You need stability, which means you need to have an economic base that you can function with, so you don't freak out about money.
Right.
You need trust within the band members, and then excellence and discipline. I mean, if you look at the Twisted book, it's all about excellence and discipline. It's excellence of execution. We work every single day. We fuck up a lot, and our attitude is we'll never fuck up the same way the next night. We'll find a new way to fuck up, but I'm going to pay attention to what happened that night. And I used to do this. We used to come back from a gig, and I would think, oh man, what happened last night? What didn't work? What did work? What didn't work? And I would go for these imaginary walks and talk to my mom had been dead for years. And I'd look up at the sky and go, Mom, what the fuck? And pretend I'm having this conversation with my mom, because I'm trying to figure out what I did that night or what happened with the band that night that led to a night that wasn't great. And that consistent ability to analyze. I go in depth into the book. When we were rejected, we mourned the rejection, we reflected on the rejection, we retooled, and we reapplied the new approach. That's a business position.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's a rational business decision that companies come to a conclusion. If you have a big problem, you got to analyze what happened. You got to reflect on what happened. Then you retool, and then you reapply the retooling. That's how successful companies live. That's how car companies live. That's how shoe companies live. That's how the entertainment business is. What have you done for me lately? So you have a big record today, big deal. What are you doing tomorrow? Mm-hmm. It was that constant grind and that ability to put that into play. Plus, I talk about my diary in the book. I kept diaries for years. Diaries are important because when you keep a diary and you actually put down your emotional state, and you go through a really tough time and you really write about it, then years later, if you're going through another tough time, you go back and look and you go, wow, I got through that. And I go through a point in the book where I was suicidal right after my mom died. The band broke up and then my girlfriend left me, the original Twisted, and I was depressed beyond words. And I really wanted to kill myself. And the pain was overbearing. Absolutely overbearing. And so when people talk about depression, I don't ever take that lightly. If someone's telling you they're depressed, really depressed, and they're thinking of killing themselves, you listen to that person.
Right.
They're telling you they're in some serious shit. They're in real pain. I didn't have the guts to do it. My brother didn't recognize my pain. I came out of it 8 months later. I woke up one morning and the pain was over. And I guess what happened was I healed on my own, I guess. Again, I come back a lot in this book, I get over it, but it taught me about depression. I never allowed myself to get to that level again. If I see myself going there, I go get professional help. I take medication. But on top of all that, I had 2 heart operations, over the years, and I am a prostate cancer survivor, and I'm doing a whole thing on prostate cancer this month, Zero Prostate Cancer. I'm the spokesperson this month. And people said to me, how did you get over prostate cancer? I didn't get over it. First of all, you're never over it. You can come back whenever. But I approached the prostate cancer diagnosis and the treatment the same way I approached Twisted Sister, which was you get on with it. Read, research, do everything you can do, learn as much as you can learn. And I can lecture people on it. That's how much I know about prostate cancer. My father died of it. My brother had it. I had it.
Wow.
And People think that my hair is the way my hair is because it's chemotherapy. Actually, people have said it to me. They go, "Are you on chemo?" And the answer is no. This is just me just doing this. But I don't care. If it was chemo, I would say it's chemo. But I was diagnosed with an advanced case of prostate cancer, having watched it intently for 10 years. I had 5 biopsies before they finally found it. And it just kind of came out of nowhere, really aggressive. And I had to deal with it. And it was tough to deal with it. But what are you going to do? You got to deal with it. So I am the spokesperson for Zero Prostate Cancer this month, which is a organization. It's basically it's a teaming up with Bayer aspirin. And it's to create awareness of prostate cancer and the treatments and to raise money for treatments for prostate cancer. So I'm very much part of that. So my daughter had I also had atrial fibrillation, which is 2 heart operations. And my daughter had uveitis, which is the leading cause of blindness in young girls in America. And when I was managing Seven Dust, especially at that time, I was dealing with 2 things. My daughter's uveitis, which is a rare eye disease, and her having to deal with it, which is really, really tough. And my atrial fibrillation, which is making me sick. Do you know anything about atrial fibrillation?
Yes, my mom has AFib.
Right. It's horrible.
Yeah.
It's debilitating. And I was dealing with 2 illnesses while I was managing Seven Dust. It made it very hard to manage them at that time. Twisted was not playing at that time. But I was dealing with my daughter's uveitis, which you could read about. It's the inflammation of the uvea lens, which is the middle lens of the eye, which is part of the rheumatoid arthritis school of diseases, which is a complicated, complex disease that's it's not technically curable, but it can go away. It can burn itself out. In her case, it has not yet gone away, and she's had it for over 20 years. And you got to take a lot of heavy immunosuppressive drugs, which is a whole other thing. So you learn all about that. My atrial fibrillation was really terrible. I mean, horrible. I was getting sicker and sicker and sicker, but I eventually had an operation that cured me.
Oh, really? So
First operation failed and almost killed me. First operation, when they took the catheters out, tore my heart muscle, and 400 cc's of blood flooded my chest and collapsed my lung and put me in the ICU.
Oh, wow.
And then I recovered from that. And then 2 years after that, I had the operation again with the right doctor at the right hospital, and they cured it. So I'm very happy about that. But
That's great.
Yeah.
You've really been through a lot of stuff, JJ.
yeah,
Between that and everything I read, it's just amazing. You're an amazing person to have been through all this stuff and everything you've gone through and survived. And are here, still here. No, I'm not a quitter.
You are not a quitter. You're a remarkable person. A lot of respect for you, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, next year I'm going to be 70, so I have to really think that through. Oh my God. I mean, when we were 20, we didn't think that. And now look, I mean, we're like Gene is, I think Kissy's 72, Paul's 71. God knows Keith Richards is still alive. How is that?
I know.
We all look at Keith. Keith and goes, he's still alive.
It's funny because, I'm a singer and I had my own bands, but I was in this Tom Petty tribute doing Stevie Nicks, and we played at the Hard Rock in Philly in 2019. And we actually opened up for Keith Richards' wife, Patty, her brother or
nephews
or something. Yeah, their band. Yeah.
Was he there? Is Keith coming
No,
back?
he wasn't there.
We thought maybe
they'd show up, but they weren't there.
You never know.
His book is amazing. His book is fabulous. I read his book and I said, I don't know how the hell he remembered any of this shit, But Keith he's an amazing character. I mean, my thing is, who's going to die first, Keith or Cher? I think they both seem to be going on forever and ever.
Yeah, Cher still looks the same, and she
at all. In England, who's going first?
JJ, do you remember playing at Lupo's in Bethlehem, PA, back in the mid to late 90s?
We didn't with Twisted because Twisted did not get back together. Twisted stopped playing in 87 and didn't get back together to 2003.
Okay, because Dee was there. I mean, it was a sick MF tour.
Yeah, the SMF's tour.
Right. SMF, yeah.
Yeah, he probably.
Yeah, because I met Dee. I have my picture with Dee. I had dark hair then. You're talking about like 30 years ago, but almost.
Yeah, so that I'm sure Dee kept it going during that period of time. And then we got back together in a fluky way. I mean, 9/11 is coming up, in a couple of days. And it's because of 9/11, the band reformed. You know, we were asked by Eddie Trunk if we would play a benefit, and we did. And we just thought it would just be a benefit, a one-off, and that would be it. Like, we didn't know if anybody cared about the band. It didn't matter. We just played a benefit and had fun. And the next thing you know, we were offered all this money to get back together again. And then from 2003 to 2016, we headlined the biggest shows in the world. And we made a Christmas record that was a big hit. We had a huge fun with that. I mean, the bands had, when people say to me, tell me the chapters of the band, I say, there's the club days, there's the video era, there's the darkness era when the lights went out from 88 to 2002, and then there was the festival era. And the festival era was really the era that we were so blessed to be able to have, you know, to come back at the level that we came back at, to play to crowds on a regular basis from 60 to 100,000 people every night that we played, headline the biggest shows with the biggest bands, and then to make a Christmas record that was so big, released multiple DVDs, multiple albums. You know, we were really blessed to have a multi-stage career that way. I'm very, very grateful. And then, of course, we're not going to take it and I Want to Rock. I've just been licensed and licensed and licensed. I mean, 2 years ago, we were the #1 song in the Super Bowl. We have the song right now in the Nutrish dog commercial. I mean, we have hundreds and hundreds of licenses. And then we're not going to take it to become a worldwide anthem. You know, everybody sings it.
We played it too, my band.
Everyone sings it around the world. You know, when they were having the Brexit argument in England, they were singing, "We're not going to Brexit," you know, in England at the parliament. It's astonishing, this song that Dee wrote. I talk about it all the time, you know, and who knew? There's no way you knew 40 years ago.
Right.
You know, if you think about the two most famous songs from the 70s, Queen would have to be "We Are the Champions" and "We Will Rock You." Those are the two biggest anthems from the 70s. You think the two biggest anthems of the 80s is "I Want to Rock" and "We're Not Going to Take It." And they're all from the same record.
Right.
And so for people who don't like Twisted or write us off or think we suck or whatever, guess what? You can never take that away from us. Those songs will live forever in ways that most bands won't have the luxury of having.
Absolutely.
It's very special.
Absolutely. So now, JJ, you have done many things, right? Writing, producing. You have your own podcast show as well.
Yeah, it's called the JJ French Connection. I'm having a lot of fun with that. I get to bring on, you know, producers, writers, singers, guitar players that I love, and I have that. So that's a side thing. I write for several magazines. I write for Goldmine. I write a Beatle column for Goldmine because I'm a quote Beatle specialist. You know, like the world needs another one. You know, but I am one of those kinds of guys. And although I'm not nuts. I mean, there's me, and then there's real nuts, and the real nuts are the guys who know what George said to Paul as they were walking across Abbey Road at 3:00 in the afternoon on January 6, 19. Oh, your shoes are untied. I don't need to know that shit. Like, there are guys out there who know that shit. I don't need to know that shit, but I'll read the book they wrote. That's fine. But I don't need to know it. But anyway, I write an article for Goldmine. I wrote a Beatle column called Now We're 64. I write an audio column for Copper magazine, which is an online high-end audio magazine, which is great. I have several stories. I have 50 stories in Inc.com, which is a business magazine. And that's what kind of got me into the whole business world that way, along with my writer, Steve Farber, who co-wrote the book with me. I got into motivational speaking and corporate speaking gigs because of Steve Farber, at which point, when you do enough of these things, everyone asks the same question. So when's the book coming out? That's what everybody says. So when's the book coming out? Well, the book is out. The book took 5 years to do with Steve. And I hope that people find it inspiring. I hope that they find it informative. Did you learn stuff that you had no idea?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the book is not so much a story about Twisted, although it is, as much as it's a story about how to overcome.
It's you and all the things that you overcame your whole life.
Yeah. Overcoming and turning. I say it's turning roadblocks into pathways, and that's what the book is really about. It's really like it's like a motivational book, and I'm really, really happy about it. And I hope people feel the same positivity out of the book. I hope that's that is my contribution to the human experience.
Well,
You know, and as I say, and you know, when you get emails from fans telling you that you got me through this and you got me through that, nothing is more satisfying
sure.
than those emails that you get from fans who say to you, your music made me get through the toughest times, because we don't even know that. You know, we don't know. You don't know until someone tells you. Just the same way that certain bands got me through certain times, we did that for other people. And that's incredibly humbling to know that we could have had that kind of positive, you know, effect on people.
Music is always the key to basically when you feel down, you always have it there to get you through the rough times. It got me
Well,
through rough times.
it's an international language, isn't it?
Absolutely.
It is.
That's the beauty of it. That's why we can play in South America and you know, Europe and Asia, whatever. It speaks across cultures, and metal speaks across cultures.
Oh yeah.
In America, metal is not.
Not what it is in Europe. Europe is
But Europe,
they appreciate
South
it.
America, you play South America soccer stadiums today. There'll be like 17-year-old kids who were not born. Their parents weren't even married at the time those songs came out.
Mhm.
And you go, and they love it. You know, they live it. They love it. They love it. They love the Whitesnakes and the Twisteds and the Kisses and
Oh yeah.
the Motley Crues and the
80s.
Judas Priest and the AC/DCs and the Motorheads. You know, they love these bands. They worship these bands. We give something to them. In the 80s, we were so critically smashed. You know, oh, you know, it's simplistic, it's stupid, it's this, it's that, it's this, it's that. Well, guess what? It outlasted everybody. And from a numbers basis, if there was no COVID and you added up all the people that went to see artists around the world, the leading band music would be metal still to this day.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So now with the COVID situation, you know, and everything going on, what's next for JJ French?
Well, you know, I hope the book does well, because I love speaking. I love inspiring people. That really is it. You know, there may be another book there. There probably will be a book. If this book does well, I'm sure there'll be another book. But in terms of performing live, people ask me every day, is the band going to reform? Is the band going to reform? You know, once before in 1988, I swore it would never happen again.
Mhm.
And it did. So I'm not going to say it will never happen again, but I will say that if it doesn't, it doesn't. If it does, it does. For whatever reason, maybe it's a benefit, maybe it's an award show. I don't know. But I'm having too much fun writing and speaking, and I don't play that much. Although I have like a little side project, but called the Pink Slip Blues Band, but it plays so rarely, it's almost non-issue, but it involves the drummer for Lynyrd Skynyrd, Michael Cardelloni, and Joel Hoekstra from Whitesnake,
Nice.
and me, and the bass player is Joe Bonamassa's producer, Bobby Held, who's written with Kiss and Alice Cooper. And it's a great little blues band. It's a lot of fun. We just don't play very much. And with COVID, we haven't played at all. So
Mhm.
who knows if it's going to get back together again. So if I got together with a band, it would be a blues band, and that may happen in the near future. But right now, promoting the book after 5 years of writing it is really the focus, and I hope it does well. And I really appreciate you having me and helping me talk about it.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely.
It's been our pleasure. Believe me, I really enjoyed reading the book. And like I said, I learned a lot, and it was just like, we were just blown away by your strength and tenacity and everything. And it's just like amazing,
Yes.
you know?
Yeah. And you have to say, because like when you think you're down, you just get back up, you dust yourself off, and you start over.
Yeah.
You just can't quit.
That's great.
And that's the thing we love about it.
Yeah, well, thank you. And it sounds simple, and it's not simple.
No.
But and like I said, hopefully I have tools that people can see and go, let's follow that roadmap. You know,
Exactly.
if that's the way to do it, he did it. Let's analyze it the way he's thinking. And maybe it doesn't work for you, because, you know, life is life. You make the choices you make. But it's certainly been a ride. I can tell you, when Twisted started in 1970, at the end of 72, if someone told me 50 years later, we'd be talking about Twisted Sister, and 50 years later, we'd be talking about selling records, and 50 years later, we'd be talking about our relevance, I'd go, are you nuts? 50 years? First of all, I'm going to be 70. Who's going to be in this business? So I think all of our bands from that era, like I said, are all in shock. And we're still out there doing it. So it's great. Our fan base is great. The people who love us are great. And to all my fellow band members and all these fans that we run across in all these festivals, I have the utmost respect for all of you and all the hard work you put in, because I lived it, breathed it, understand it, and totally understand what it takes to make it. And it doesn't even matter if it's metal, pop, I don't care what it is. It's a tough. Living is hard, and the music business is harder.
Absolutely. Well, JJ, we want to thank you so much for coming on the show this evening. It's been a real pleasure. We want to tell everybody, make sure that they go out and get JJ's book, Twisted Business. Great reading, learn a lot, not only about JJ's life, maybe about your own.
Thank you. And again, my podcast, which is the JJ Friend Connection, on Apple and on Spotify and on all available portals. Listen to that. That's a fun thing for me to have. The book, the podcast is great, and hopefully, people can interact with me. You can write me an email at askjj askjjjyjyts@gmail.com, and I'll answer your questions. And if you're a band and you have a tough time, whatever you want. And I'm on Cameo too. All the stuff, right?
Yeah,
we're all
right.
so we're connected in so many different ways right now. Now's the time post, as we're dealing with COVID, to connect as much as possible. So
exactly.
Appreciate it, guys, and much luck and continued success with your show.
Thank you. You too, so JJ. We hope that, you have great success with the book, and I'm sure you will.
Thank you. Take care.
Have a great night.
Take care now.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
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 You're listening to Music 101 with your host, Alexxis Steele. Sponsored by Steel Notes Magazine. You can find them at the web, folks, at www.steelnotesmagazine.com.